Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where I'm sure you've noticed recently we've been talking an awful lot about theme parks, particularly of the Disney variety. And we're going to do it again today. And that's because Disney has gone from focusing on their theme park division to becoming unusually aggressive with their theme park additions. So aggressive that I was like, man, what lit a fire under Bob Iger's butt when it comes to theme parks? So I couldn't find the 2017 attendance numbers, but it turns out that from 2015 to 2016, attendance dropped at Disney theme parks across the globe, with the exception of Shanghai, which just opened. And there you go. That's what is making Bob Iger panic. Because remember, ESPN started to dip in its numbers and hasn't stopped since, and continues to be a lead weight for Disney, not just in terms of the company's image, but also their stock price. So they're trying to fix ESPN, and I think they don't want the same thing to happen with their theme parks, which would be a tragedy, because not only are they a big part of the Disney portfolio, but of course Disney's image, something that's original to Walt Disney. He invented the modern theme park. And I think also if they show weakness in this area, they could see even more competition from other studios. Universal for a while there was really strong. I think that's waned a bit, but expect them to come roaring back, as many of you have pointed out, with Nintendo Land. And then Warner Brothers is building a very aggressive theme park in Dubai, I believe. And if that does well, they could potentially expand. And then, of course, Lionsgate has been, threatening to build a theme park in London for quite some time. I believe it was Lionsgate, and BBC was supposed to be involved, and Paramount, I think. But, we haven't really heard anything about that. So, Disney wants to not only make sure that they're, and also the picture of an empty Disney theme park would be so horrible, just from a publicity perspective. So I think they want to keep this strong and also keep competitors at bay. So we've talked about Hong Kong Disneyland expanding, and then of course Disney World is getting a lot of new rides, and then both Disney World and Disneyland are getting Star Wars Galaxy Edge, set to open in 2019. But yesterday, Bob Iger announced that they are going to invest $2 billion, that's right, with a B, or like 2 Marvel movies worth. They have the money. 2 billion euros in Disneyland Paris. So if you're in the vicinity of Disneyland Paris, you're in for a treat. You're not only getting your own Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, but you're getting a Marvel land and a Frozen land. So is Hong Kong Disneyland, by the way. They're not getting Star Wars, though. This will make for 3 Galaxy's Edge across the globe. Los Angeles, Orlando, or Anaheim, technically. Anaheim, Orlando, and then now Paris. And so I guess they're expecting, as I would imagine, huge demand. There are, just for comparison's sake, 3 Wizarding Worlds of Harry Potter. Those are in Orlando, Los Angeles proper, and then also they have one in Japan at their theme park there. Now, I think that as they build so many Star Wars lands, one has to wonder if perhaps they'll do a Marvel land in the United States. That's conspicuously absent from the continent, where, of course, Disney theme parks originated. My guess is they'll probably start pushing that after Galaxy's Edge opens bi-coastal in 2019. But also maybe, just maybe, they're in the midst of trying to work something out with Universal so that a Marvel land could be built in Orlando. They could always build it at California Adventure, but I think that that's a smaller property, the Disneyland Resort. It doesn't have the hotels that Orlando does, and so I think it would be ideal to build, a really big Marvel complex in the Orlando resort. And of course, we all want to see them build a Wakanda land, which we spoke about yesterday, that Bob Iger has spoken to. But also, I'm worried, speaking of Disney's identity, theme parks being such a big part of their identity, as they change so much over to Star Wars and Marvel, I worry if the theme parks will continue to feel like Disney, right? And what is Disney as it evolves? Are they, are they losing their identity as a company? And, will that be reflected again in the theme parks? I would hope that Bob Iger would realize how well his live action fairy tales are doing for him, and he would continue to push that brand as well, not just in the multiplex, but in theaters. I guess Frozen kind of speaks to that, but it's very much, I think, its own thing, and it isn't, the overall Disney brand. I would hate to see it get pushed back just to being Main Street. But we'll see. And also, if theme park attendance is down, theme park attendance is down. No matter how I feel about it as a Disney fan in terms of the history of the Disney theme parks and the tone, bottom line, if people aren't going, they aren't going. So I can see these these decisions to build up the theme parks in this way. So I'm curious, are you excited about it? How do you feel about the Disney identity? Do you go to the theme parks? Have you stopped going? And also, if you don't go, would you perhaps go with these additions? It's expensive, get ready, because they keep raising the prices. Although, as they say, you could go during the value season. Although, I have to say, I recently was checking out the different seasons for the Disney parks in Orlando, and the value seasons, because they have so many events like marathon races, etc., they're limited. The value season is really small, so they might want to consider expanding that maybe just a little bit if they want to, just for some goodwill. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second story of the day, talk about attendance being down. Well, they've been down for Toby Kebbell movies for quite some time. Remember Toby Kebbell? We're going to talk about him because he's a very good example today of navigating a career path in Hollywood and the tough choices that you have to make. So for a while, he was everywhere. He was this hot up-and-coming talent. Not only was he personally on screen, but he really got involved in motion capture. Some people felt where he was trying to be billed as, Andy Serkis's protege, right? He was in the Apes movies with him. He was in Warcraft. He was a big deal. I would say that he peaked probably with the 1-2 punch of playing Doom in the Fantastic Four movie from Josh Trank. I thought he was good. And also in Ben-Hur, where I also thought he was good. But boy, it was rough for Toby Kebbell. And it got to the point where even I, as a fan, wouldn't cast him in a movie. He was also in Kong Skull Island, where I felt very bad for his character. But audiences made it clear they just were not interested. So he's kind of disappeared. He has some movies coming up. One is for Entertainment Studios, the company that released that Shark movie, and then also Hostiles, which was a fabulous movie. But they're a small, very small new studio, and something else, some other little small film. But not what I would really call legit movies. But he just signed a deal, and that's to do a television series, but it's network television. ABC. That's amazing for them to get somebody who used to be in movies. It's for a pilot, it hasn't even been picked up yet for sure, called Salvage, about an ex-cop who moves to Florida, and he wants to stay to himself. But of course, he gets drawn into a local murder. I love network television. I think network television's audience is dwindling, right? I think less and less people, I think it's a generational thing, and I think fewer people today are into network television. But, it's still ticking along. As he looks into this local murder, there's also sunken treasure involved, which is why it's called Salvage. And of course, there's like the snooty rich people in town that he has to take on, etc., etc. Now, I can see why you might be like, Toby Kebbell, don't do it. But there's a lot of money in network television. Like, if your series connects, it's just a really amazing gig, because not only do you get an amazing steady paycheck, and if you hit 5 seasons, you get royalties from it running in syndication, but also it's like a 9-to-5 job. You only have to work basically Monday through Friday. You have set hours. It's really cushy. People really want television, particularly network TV, for that reason, both in front of and behind the camera. It's a really nice gig. Even if it doesn't, let's say, fulfill you creatively. And for instance, Lucas Till, the new MacGyver, he used to be in movies, wasn't working out so well for him either. He was like in the X-Men films, remember? His Havoc, right? And so he took this gig, MacGyver, and I'm sure he's having a fabulous time, right? Again, even if it's not maybe how he pictured himself as an actor when he first made the decision for that career. So that just shows the tough choices that you have to make in Hollywood, right? If your movie career is not working out, maybe you should go TV. And this network opportunity presented itself, and I have to say, I think Kebbell made the right call. I think that he should go for it, because I just don't see movies working out for him. And he is not getting calls for a streaming show, because I think streaming shows feel they're a little bit like movies adjacent. So I think they would have the same concerns about him as a movie producer would. But it's fascinating. And so I'll be curious to see if Salvage does well. Do you think you'd tune in to Salvage for Toby Kebbell? Will actors that you're familiar with going on network shows maybe make you watch them? I'm curious. But the formula for network shows is just so distinct. I really think that's one of the reasons that keeps it from crossing over in terms of audiences. All right, so that's the second story of the day. Now, as I said, I'm sure he'd rather be on Netflix, where there are so many opportunities. We're going to talk about streaming now. We're going to talk about Netflix and also Apple, which is really bulking up the content it's getting prepared to launch with just signing M. Night Shyamalan. But I want to start the conversation with Netflix that announced, of course, we all know that they're spending $8 billion on content this year, but they boasted, one of their executives yesterday said, we're going to have 700 pieces of original content, be it TV shows, movies, or specials. And that includes, by the way, outside shows from foreign countries like Germany, and they put dark on their series on their platform, for instance. And so to Netflix, that's original content for them. And they're doing this to drive growth. They say that it gets more people to subscribe and it keeps people subscribed. You know, we've talked before about riding the waves of Netflix. Subscribe for a month, you've watched your show, maybe 2 months you don't subscribe, then you log back on, you renew your subscription if something else comes on that you're interested. Netflix obviously doesn't want you to do that. And at the end of 2017, Netflix had 117 million subscribers globally. That's actually not that many considering how many people there are in the world, and that's exactly how Netflix feels. So they want to get more people to subscribe. So as they, prepare to go to war with the rest of Hollywood, because Hollywood was like, damn, you're making a lot of money, Netflix, I want in. So Apple, of course, is one of those companies that has felt that way. So they have their morning show coming up, behind the scenes. It's like Gary Shandling, but for like morning shows. It's going to star Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon. Then they also signed Kumail Nanjiani and his wife, writing partner Emily Gordon, to do an immigrant series called Little America. Damien Chazelle is doing some kind of drama for them. I'm not quite sure what his involvement is, but he's the name that they're going to use to push it. He, of course, did La La Land, Whiplash. He's very talented. Even though I didn't like La La Land, I think he's a very talented person. Although he's not leaving movies, so I would suspect maybe he's just a producer. And then also now they just signed M. Night Shyamalan. He's going to do a 10-episode, half-hour series for them. It's going to be, of course, a thriller. And I don't know how I feel about this. I think he's really hit or miss. And luckily, he's only done well because Jason Blum, I think, as a producer, has done a good job keeping him in check. Blum producing both The Visit and Split. Also, I think M. Night Shyamalan had a real ego check there for a while, but I think that M. Night Shyamalan, since his ego tripped him up the first time around, I think if it gets bigger again, I could easily see there being a repeat of what happened before. I think, I think it's really hard to give M. Night Shyamalan notes, would be my suspicion. So, and also, Wayward Pines was a very good show for Fox until it became just absolutely horrible. Because, he's so, having a twist is so his thing that I think sometimes it's forced and sometimes it takes the show in a really bad direction, as it did with Wayward Pines. So, I don't know, of course, who's not going to check out the new M. Night Shyamalan show on Apple, though, right? And I'm curious, how is this going to work, though? How will Apple promote its own content? I mean, I guess they have that banner at the top where they promote things, as they do now. But imagine how you'll feel if you're another content provider and you suddenly see Apple maybe pushing its own stuff a little harder than yours, right? I wonder if it'll drive, as a result, people off of Apple TV. And Apple will become like Netflix, just like Netflix. Netflix originally started allowing you to have other people's content. It's like, remember that. And now it's only now become its own thing as people pulled their content from the service. And I could see maybe the same thing happening to iTunes. So I think Apple hopefully has weighed that. I'm sure they have. They must have. Because also places like Disney start their own streaming services, they wouldn't need Apple to get their content out there. They would, of course, want you to come to the Disney streaming service and purchase the show there. Fascinating. All right, so that's the third story of the day, and I'm curious how you feel about the way streaming services are shaping up and what you plan to watch and what you don't. Now, I have a really interesting business viewer question from Krishka Stoffels. So this is a tough one. So it's very specific. I like it. So Krishka says, viewer question. How do producers go about getting distribution companies, the studios, to fund their films? I hear that's one of the best routes to get your film made and to guarantee distribution. It is! That is the way to guarantee funding and have distribution. That's the goal. So let me explain to you how film finance works. This is just like the surface of it. So studios have a studio like Warner Brothers, Disney, etc. They have finance deals, and they have a line of financing provided to them overall that they have the rights to disperse as they see fit. And usually someone on the financing board of the financing company is privy to the conversations of what gets greenlit, or at least, has some say in the matter. For instance, at Warner Brothers, well, at least for now, Brett Ratner has been a big financier for Warner Brothers through his Rat Pack banner. And then Legendary started out as a financier. So did, I forgot the name. It was like Revolution Studios or something. I can't remember it, but it was this. I think Ryan Kavanaugh was the CEO, and they were Universal's financier for a long time. And just like Legendary, they went into production, making their own movies. They became a production company. And just on a side note, it was a scandal both times when the line blurred between film finance and film production, that these finance companies were taking credit for films that they only financed. Legendary, that's why they split. I believe it was with Warner Brothers, first, and then also why Ryan Kavanaugh's company had a problem with Universal. But anyway, that's what a studio wants. They want to have a line of financing that's guaranteed to them, and they can distribute as they see fit. Now, they give that usually to producers who have a first look deal with the studio. That includes an office on the lot or an office somewhere else that is paid for by the studio. That's part of the deal. And then the studio has right of first refusal for your projects. And they usually take them because obviously they wouldn't have gone into a deal with you if they didn't like you as a producer and the kind of projects that you do. But that's only available to top tier producers like Jerry Bruckheimer, Scott Rudin, Jason Blum at Universal to some degree, et cetera, et cetera. Because I think Jason Blum goes to a couple of different production distributors, but you have to really have a good track record to have a first look deal at a studio. Or you can be also a star, like Ryan Reynolds just got a deal with Fox, and so they have the right of first refusal for his films going forward. So everybody else, what does everyone else do, right? Because obviously that can't be your first thing to have a first look deal with a studio. So the first thing you can do is, one of your choices is that you can approach a studio with a package for a single movie to distribute and finance a single movie. And now a lot of times agencies do that. They package it in the agency, and then they go as the agent does to the studios, and they say, "This is what I've got. Are you interested?" And there'll often be a bidding war for it. And that's one of the ways that, by the way, agencies get people to sign with them, because they say, "Look at our clients of producers, of directors, writers, actors. We can package you. Look who we can package you with," and that's something that's going on these days. So that's one route. Then, of course, you can also raise the money yourself. This is mostly done for independent small movies because, you don't have to raise as much, like 10 million and under, really often 5 million and under. M. Night, speaking of M. Night, he had to put up his own money to do films like The Visit starting out because nobody else would finance him. And so you can raise your own money, and then you can either shop the film around like M. Night did, or you can go on the festival circuit if you're an awards contender type movie. And then the third option is, you see this a lot at overseas film festivals like Cannes, and that's that you sell overseas distribution first to get your money, to package the film. Okay, we've raised the money, and then once it starts to look pretty good, then a US distributor sees they don't have to pay for it, and they go, okay, I'll distribute it. So those are the different ways that you can secure financing. It's both the end goal of having that cushy first look deal, office included, and they'll also pay for staff too, and some expenses. It's amazing. And then if you're on the lot, you get to use the cafeteria. It's so cool. But if you don't have a first look deal, again, you can either get a deal for a single film that's been packaged. You can either raise the money yourself and then get a distributor on the festival circuit, or you can get secure overseas distribution to get the financing first, and then again, because the studio no longer has to pay for it, besides advertising, they sign on to distribute in the States. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please write down below, I think, today's top 3 stories, Krishka's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions, of course, that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.